Hey, 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 welcome to the studio. Hey, 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 welcome to the studio. Hey, Katie, what are we going to learn today? What? What an amazing question. Who asked that? Me? My own self? That's incredible. Right now, I'm sure you're feeling a little bit cramped inside your house, even if you have a nice big house and a beautiful studio to be working in. The fact that I can't just freely go to the grocery store feels a little bit restrictive to me. And I'm sure it feels restrictive to you, the fact that you can't just throw a football to a friend, right? These things, they feel a little bit different than our normal lives, and it's okay to feel a little bit crammed. But in order for me to get that out, I have a really, really wildly active imagination and I draw all the time. But if you're having a hard time coming up with an idea of what you guys can draw, I have a little bit of a step-by-step instruction to show you a project example that you guys could be working towards. And since we're all feeling a little bit crammed physically, we actually physically feel that, we might also be mentally feeling it. We have a lot of homework that's coming in differently, classwork that's coming in differently, that feels different because normally you'd be at school, maybe switching from specials to here to there. Right now, we're not doing that. So you feel a little bit crammed. No matter what, everyone's got a little bit of that feeling. So I took that idea of feeling super crammed and I put it into a beautifully colored piece. Everything is smashed together, but there's also a lot of happiness. There's also a lot of joy, and there's also a lot of color in it. So I'm gonna show you guys a little step-by-step on how you guys can come up with the ideas to put this together. All right, first things first, my friends, clean your area. I definitely cannot use my Apple Pencil on paper, so I'm going to put that to the side along with my glove. And what you're looking at right now is my Canson XL recycled paper. You don't need recycled paper to do this project, but for me, I kind of like to use recycled paper just because, especially if it's just a sketch, I'm probably not going to keep them forever. Sometimes I keep my sketches, but most often I end up probably throwing them out or giving them away. So first things first on coming up with your ideas, you can decide what kind of pencil you want to use, what kind of writing apparatus. So I like mechanical pencils, I like ballpoint pens, whatever you use is totally fine. This is just copy paper because I happen to have it in the computer room where I started this idea. So I just started writing on that. And what I'm writing is all the ideas. It's just basic brainstorming. So, for example, if bird makes you think of nest, nest makes me think of egg. Egg makes me think of Easter. An Easter makes me think of a bunny. A bunny makes me think of hopping. Hopping makes me think of a pogo stick. A pogo stick makes me think of a skateboard. A skateboard makes me think of a helmet. A helmet makes me think of ramps. So all different ideas that you guys can come up with to start to create this crammed piece. So in this, I'm showing you that all of these different drawings are actually physically connected. Everything is just crammed together, right? So there's a skateboard in each of my pieces. There's flowers in a lot of my pieces. You can also use pieces and characters and objects that you often use. Here I have a bunch of characters in a wagon and I have a different character set to the side to isolate that character a little bit more. So now we're gonna get into the actual sketching. We're going to move on to the actual blank sketch paper that I have, but I'm going to be working off of the list that I already used. So I have my ballpoint pen, my mechanical pencil, my eraser, and somewhere I do actually have a real pencil. Oh, wait, up, and I got it. It fell on the floor. But I never really use it, and honestly, to sketch, I love using a ballpoint pen. I like the stroke of the line. I just like the way it feels. But what I'm going to do when I start sketching, if I write the word gem or diamond or crystals, I'm not just going to draw one version of a crystal or a gem or a diamond. I'm probably going to draw a couple of different versions of the gem or the crystal. I want to be able to exhaust all of my options, so I do draft a few different versions out. So even if I write unicorn, I'm probably going to draft out a few different versions of a unicorn sitting in different positions. If you're looking at a person standing, that looks very different than a person jumping. And a person regularly jumping looks very different than a person flying off of a skateboard ramp holding onto their skateboard. So even if you write the word unicorn, there's many different positions and many different ways that you guys could illustrate that idea. Your unicorn could be a normal unicorn. It could be a little bit more realistic. Or it could be a chubby little unicorn and it has tiny little stubby legs. Or you can make a unicorn wearing sneakers like I'm going to do here. I often like to draw my characters wearing sneakers because I have a little bit of an obsession with sneakers. I've tried to not have an obsession with sneakers, but they're just so cute. So, as I'm doing this, I'm laying down my first layer super, super, super lightly. I like to go in and just kind of figure out where everything's going. And again, this is just a sketch, but I like to take my sketches super seriously because it's going to tell me how I'm drawing on my actual final paper. When I move on to my final paper, if you choose, you could stick with using ballpoint pen. I would use a nicer paper than the one I'm using here if you're doing a final project, but for sketching, this is perfect. I like to lay everything out really, really lightly and then go back around everything with a little bit of a heavier pen. That way I can actually see what lines I'm going to use. Sometimes the lines that I use, I call them search lines, are just lines to find out where the perfect line actually is. And once I've established where the perfect line is, that's the one I go in and I start to darken. As you can see, I'm doing it with the sneakers now, with the back of the unicorn, with the hair, all of this, right? So I go in for the horn. So everything I do starts with a very simple shape and I start to build off of that as much as I possibly can. And like I said before, if I write the word unicorn, that doesn't mean I just draw one version of a unicorn, because again, you're going to be cramming all of your objects into one smaller confined space. I want to be able to draw a couple of different versions of this and a couple of different positions for my characters or for my objects and size differences too, so that when I look back at my sketches while I'm creating my final, I can say, you know what, this fits here much better if it's sitting than if it's standing. And if I've never drawn a character sitting before, or this specific kind of character sitting, or a character sitting and looking at a 3/4 angle instead of a front view, then it's very different. So I want to sketch those ideas out. And there's really no shame in putting too many sketches on your sketch paper. I would rather have too many sketches so that I can go into my final super prepared than to have too few sketches and have to struggle to come up with my ideas once I'm already on my final paper. So here I'm going to speed up and I'm going to draw a couple of different things. So I have flowers, but I'm drawing a few different kinds of flowers. There's so many kinds of flowers in the world and they're so fun to draw. I love drawing flowers. I also love drawing buildings. You can choose to make something three-dimensional or you can make it flat. There's a lot of different ways that you guys can convey what you're trying to do here. You don't have to make everything super bubbly like I do. You don't have to make anything three-dimensional. And again, if I draw it on my sketch paper, that doesn't mean I have to use it. There's plenty of things on that sketch paper that I didn't actually use in my piece. So after I've finished penciling all of my sketch onto a final, what I'm doing here now is all my pen work. And you guys already know how to do pencil work onto your final papers. What I'm doing here is making sure that after I go in for my initial line work, I go in and embolden other lines, and that's called line quality. Now I'm starting to color. I'm using Copic markers to color. You could use Sharpies, you could use style files, you could use Prismacolors, any really nice markers or even colored pencils, whatever you have to color would work. But I suggest having a piece of sketch paper to test your colors out. Number one, to make sure that you like the way that the colors blend together, making sure that you have a dark, a medium, and a light, but also making sure that you actually really like the color, because one green is not always like another green, one pink is not always like another pink. If you go to Home Depot or Lowe's, you'll see a lot of different colors there. I try to use as many beautiful colors as I can in one piece, but I like to separate them. So as you can see, I have some pinks that are kind of pinkish purple at the bottom, and I have a green right above that, and now I want to use bright reds. So I try to balance out where I put all my colors, but you guys can do it differently. If you want this to be fully monochromatic, you can do that. Monochromatic means that you're using only one color and many tints and shades. So if you want your full piece to be all different blues or all different purples, you could do that. If you want it to be an analogous or analogous color scheme, which means the colors sit next to each other on a color wheel, like blue and purple sit next to each other on a color wheel, or red and orange sit next to each other, you guys can create this color scheme however you want. In some cases, I try to do this a little bit more realistic and use realistic colors, even though I'm not really drawing realistically. And when I color, one thing that I really like to do is kind of get my edges first. I like to make sure that my marker tip, the very tip of it, is the part that touches my outer black line. You guys can do whatever you want on this, but I would say make it purposeful. And I'm going to say something a little crazy for you. I am a fan of coloring inside of my lines. If you want to try to color outside of your lines and you want to try a new technique or style your work differently, I would definitely suggest practicing it on a different page than the one you've already done all of your sketching and your pencil and your pen work for. You've put a lot of work in so far, so I wouldn't go in and just try to do experimental things just right now on this paper. I would definitely take another piece of paper and try out a couple of new techniques. When I color, I like to have a range of different varied hues and intensities. I like to have a dark, a medium, and a light. And as you can see, I started with a pink that was kind of purpley, and then I faded it down to a little bit more of a peachy color. And I think that's kind of cool. As you can see in here too, I have a paper airplane that looks like it's made out of loose leaf paper. My flowers have little dots on them. The buildings, some of the buildings have boarded up windows. Even the hat has these squiggles and the dots in it. That's my own version of stylizing my work. You guys can do this however you want, but if you're trying something brand new for the first time, try it on your sketch paper first. All right, thanks for watching this video. I hope that you actually enjoyed it, and I just want to leave you with this little quote and a thought that's been kind of getting me through the week. And the quote is, "We are like islands in the sea. We are separate on the surface, but connected in the deep." Stay connected, my friends.